Today we are diving into the final steps of installing our Gaggiuino Gen 3 in a Gaggia E24. In my last video, I covered all the essential preparations, including bench tests, to ensure your kit is fully functional. If you didn't see, I highly recommend checking out my last video and exploring my Gaggiuino installation playlist. It's a comprehensive resource covering both Gen 2 and Gen 3 installations plus accessories. Before we get started, a quick note on structure. You may find some sections of this video repetitive, and this is intentional because it is designed to cover both the 110 and 220 setups. My aim is to ensure that even if you're only watching the wiring for 1 voltage, you won't miss any crucial information. It's also important to mention that I don't have a 110 volts machine, so I wasn't able to perform a final test. However, I simulated the entire installation process in details to provide clear guidance even for beginners to follow the schematics and complete their setup. This approach does make the video a bit longer. The 110 volts is 19 minutes and the 220 volts is 26 minutes. For the 110 segment, I did the stock wiring. However, I highly encourage the viewers in the 110 regions to take a quick look in the 220 volts wiring. You will see the significant benefits of the custom wiring, like it's more organized, it's cleaner, and easier to understand. But I also included detailed timestamps, so feel free to jump to the chapters that are most relevant for you. And I also recommend you to save this video to your favorites, since it is designed to be a complete and thorough guide. And with all that said, let's jump right to the installation. Before jumping to the wiring, remember to check the machine-specific instructions. For example, if you have a machine that is 220 volts in Europe sold after 2019, you will have to do the power switch mod. If you have a machine that is 110 volts sold in 2018 or before in the US, it's suggested to ground your machine. It doesn't have grounding. And if you changed your spring in your OPV to 9 bar or less, or if you bought one of those machines sold after 2023 in the US that comes with the 9 bar stock, you won't be able to measure with the Gaggiuino any pressure that is not at least 1 bar above the pressure that you want to measure. So if we want to extract at 9 bar, for example, it won't be possible with the 9 bar spring. It will measure up to 8 bar, about 8 bar. Then, for me, it's okay. I don't mind extracting below 8 bar, but there are some profiles that you may want to use at 9 bar and it won't be possible. In my case, I had the 6.5 bar spring. Mine came with the original 15 bar, and I wanted to test some springs from AliExpress, if they were precise or not. I made some measurements. They work well, but if you want to see the details, I'll leave the card here. And now I need to revert to the original spring. And here you can see that with a wrench, you need to remove this hose and then put the original spring back. Then you will screw again. It doesn't need to be super tight, or you may break this OPV. It is made of plastic. And in this case, you will probably not have any leakage because this is just the return. It's where the OPV is sending the excess of water that otherwise would build more pressure than you wanted. And then it is sending this water back to the water reservoir. But with the original spring back, let's move to the wiring. If your machine is 110 volts, please remember that this is a simulation. I'm gonna follow all the instructions in the web page, and I'm gonna install all the wiring according to the schematics. I wanted to show you every step that you need to follow. I think everything is correct, but I'm not able to do the real test. So if you find any mistake, please let me know in the comments down below, and I can revise the video later, okay? If you're installing the 110 volts, you will go to the Gaggiuino web page, select the PCB installation, and then, well, you have to choose if your machine is a Gaggia Classic or Gaggia Classic Pro. In the case of the E24, we'll adopt the Gaggia Classic Pro. And down below in the page, you will have to choose the stock wiring or the custom wiring. If you're installing the 110 volts, you can do the stock wiring. I think the custom wiring is better, it's cleaner, it's more organized. But if you buy the kit from PIC, for example, you will be able to do the stock wiring without any other cables. So it may be more convenient. For the 220 volts, we don't have this option, not for the versions in Europe, Gaggia Classic Pro's 220 volts in Europe. Then we'll do the custom wiring page. Well, it is possible to do the stock wiring in the 220 volts, but it's recommended to do the custom wiring, okay? So I'm gonna cover now the stock wiring for the 110. Later, I'll do the custom wiring for the 220 volts. So clicking here, you will see all this information, and what matters most for us is this schematics. You will have to choose if you have a Gaggia Classic Pro, a Gaggia Classic, if it's 110 volts or 220. And if you have the 220 volts Gaggia Classic Pro, including the E24, they don't recommend the stock integration, they recommend the custom wiring, okay? So here we have the 120 volts Gaggia Classic Pro, and here is the schematic that we are gonna follow through all this installation, okay? First, I'm going to remove the buttons and identify the cables that are connected to the switches. Exactly like I did in my power switch mod. Okay. So we have on the top, left to right, green, brown, blue, and gray. I labeled the brown as B4, the gray as B5, like it was in the Gaggiuino instructions. These two were not identified. I think they are not going to be used, but I labeled as B6 and B7. Now let's do the same for this steam button. In the steam button, looking at the back of the connector, this top one will be S4, the white one will be S5, and it's the same here. So I'm gonna label only this as S5, and I'll let the other not identified. The green, I didn't see a label. Yeah, I think I'm gonna use S7. Okay, so the steam button, I messed up with the S4, and I'll have to crimp it later. This is the S5, and there were two that were not identified that I labeled as S6 and S7. And when I did the power switch mod, I had already labeled the green as P1 and the blue as P4. So here on the left we have the P1, and on the right we have the P4. I had labeled when I did the power switch mod, and I'm gonna leave as is. It's a bit tough to see inside. Here more to the left is the PB. So the PB is this gray wire, more to the back. And then we have the PA, that is the white one, the white wire here, that is more to the front. Front, I mean, closer to this side. In reality, it's the lateral side, it's the right side of the machine, the side that we have the steam valve. Okay, so this is the gray. I'm gonna call PB. PB is the gray. Now let's remove the other one. So here we have the PA. The steam thermostat has the SA and SB. Here's the brew thermostat. We're gonna remove to install the Thermocouple type K. And here we had the BA and BB connected that I already removed and labeled. So the heating element has this sequence of numbers. In the front of the machine to the right, 8.1, then 8.2, 8.3, and 8.4. Under the hose, this blue component here is the three-way valve. These are the wires connected to the three-way valve, the brown and the gray. Under these two connectors we have the ground. Here we have BA and BB. This is a jumper that comes with the kit from Peak Coffee. So we have 4 screws here that holds the boiler in position, and I'm gonna unscrew those 4. Remove the steam wand to make it easier to move it around. Let me turn the machine. So this is the brew thermostat on the lateral. Right. Here we have the brew thermostat. Now let's install the thermocouple. Now you won't be able to see, but I just need to screw this thermocouple in the same place that was the thermostat, only hand tight, doesn't need to be super tight. All right. Now we need to route this cable for the thermocouple around the front of the machine and not on the back, which would be close to the pump area and would be subject to the interference of the high voltage wires and also electromagnetic interference from the pump and the solenoid valve. So let me route this cable now because it's easier, and organize it later. All the cables that I received from Peak were previously identified following the schematics to make it easier the installation, more organized, and less subject to failures. Now we need to connect PB to the three-way valve. So the PB, if you remember, that we labeled, I'll connect the spade male to PB, and the female should connect to 3, that it's here. I'm not gonna do that because we are only simulating for the 110 volts, okay? Now the pump. Female spade to pump. Try to feel where the connectors are. It needs to be one to the left. Yeah, got it. So this wire is connected to PB, to the original place where the cable PB was in the pump. And here we connect to the P in the PCB. Next is the piggyback that will go to the white, to the PA, and to the neutral. Okay, so this piggyback will be connected to the PA, that is here, and then to the pump. Again, you will not be able to see, not now at least. Okay, good. So the other end is connected to the N in your PCB, which is this last one. Now we have the SSR. I already connected the cables to the SSR because I think it's going to be easier to fix in the machine with the cables connected, and then I'll choose also the best position. Remembering that the low voltage should go to the right if possible and the high voltage to the left, so that you keep the low voltage separate from the high voltage side of the machine. I think this is going to be the position that I'm going to put my SSR the closest possible to the left, because I need to leave some space later for the PCB, for the funnel that needs to go inside for you to refill your reservoir with water. And also the pressure transducer needs to go at the bottom of the machine. And then I need to keep the most space as possible for that, okay? To fix the SSR, we need an M4 by 10 millimeters and the nut. This is something that doesn't come in the kit from Peak. So you better have an M4 at hand if you want to fix your SSR. Ended up removing one with the connectors, the low voltage, and now I'm going to put it back. I had more space to maneuver without this connector. Okay, here we have SA and SB. It doesn't matter where you connect it in the SSR, because this is alternate current, and likewise the connectors that were in the steam thermostat, SA and SB, it doesn't matter which one you're going to connect. But for consistency, I'll put SA to SA and SB to SB. SB, SB, and SA, SA. Notice that here we have some metal exposed. In my case, I have a heat shrink tube, but you may use electric tape. Okay, so I have SA and SB. Let's get our other wires now. Okay, so last one is the male spade to B4 and the other end to the line in the PCB. So here I have the B4 that I previously identified. I can connect it here. So B4 to line in the PCB. And this is going to be your last connection to the PCB. So now let me show how you connect your brew and steam switches. The low voltage cable has a ground that will go on these two bottom connectors, here and here. Then you have one connector to control the steam that will go, of course, on the steam switch here on the top. And you have one that will go to the brew switch, also on the top. And the other end, this connector here, will go to your PCB in the J7. So according to the electrical installation, we removed B4 and connected to line. B5, we could let it in place. So here's the B5 and I'll let it here. On the other side, in the steam switch, okay, so S4 should be here on the top. And the S5, we should keep here. And the S7 we should keep here. Right. So this is the steam connector. S4, S5, S7. The other side is the red that comes from the J7 connector. The ground that also comes from the J7 connector, the low voltage wire. Here in the brew switch we have the blue that goes also to the J7. This black is the ground, also from the J7. These are the low voltage wires. And here on the side we have only the B5 left. This is how it should be in your machine. Now for the pressure transducer we'll need this O-ring that comes in the kit from PIC. We're gonna put it inside the connector, hand tight. I think it's okay. There's a gap and it's expected. Now we are going to connect this to the hose. This hose that goes to the boiler, we need to cut about 65 millimeters above the connection to the boiler, around here. I'm going to measure and mark. I think it will leak some water. It's a bit difficult to cut here. Okay, maybe I can use this hose cutter. Let's try also the other end here. Great. Okay, now we need to connect the T. We also need the clamps. Okay, so here I'll connect the one that will go to the pressure transducer, this one to the pump, and the other go into the boiler. Let's see now how I can connect the other hose. This is super tight without removing the boiler. And I need to be sure that I'm going to be able to tighten the screw again. And maybe like this. I should have space. Okay. Let's try to connect the T. The best position for me was holding with a plier and then using a longer screw to tighten this one. Now the last one. First the clamp and then let's insert the hose. Alright, so here we have the pressure transducer. This is the position that it's gonna stay, probably. And now let's see if the funnel will pass and if I'm gonna be able to close the machine. Just a simulation. But in terms of the main wiring for the 110, I think we're done. I'll do the same now for the 220 volts. And in the other chapter, I'll do the final connections that it's going to be the same for both the 110 and the 220 volts machine. If you're installing the 110 volts, feel free to skip the next chapter and go straight to the final connections. But I would recommend you to at least take a quick look in the next chapter to see how do you feel about doing the custom integration. If it's something easy for you, I would recommend to go through that route. I think the installation is cleaner, is more organized, it's less confusing, but it's more work. You have to buy wires, connectors, crimp the connectors, but I think it's worth the effort. Okay, now that I made for the 220, I think this is what I would do for any machine. If you're installing the 220 volts Gaggia Classic Pro, including E24 in Europe, the recommendation is to adopt the custom wiring. So that's what we're gonna do here. In the Gaggiuino webpage, in the home, you can choose PCB. It's what we are installing. We have a Gaggia Classic Pro. The same schematic is used for the E24. Then we go to the custom wiring page and we'll have the Gaggia Classic Pro 220 volts. 110, Gaggia Classics, 110 and 220 volts. If you have a Gaggia Classic or a Gaggia Classic Pro 110 volts, you may use the stock wiring integration, but you may see that the custom wiring is cleaner, it's more organized, maybe easier to understand where each wire goes to. So take a look in this video and see what you think. Maybe you will adopt the custom wiring even for the 110 volts, okay? So now we have the schematics for the PCB V3.1 and V4. Our board is a V4. So the main instructions you will see in these schematics here. This is what we are gonna follow in the whole installation. And this picture shows exactly how you should cut and crimp the cables if you are going to make all the cables by yourself. I decided to reuse the existing cables in my machine, and then I made some adaptations where needed, but most of the wiring I could reuse, and the rest I used from the kit that I bought from Peak Coffee. And then I had minimal adaptations to make, maybe a flag connector here and there, some insulation. In some cases I decided to solder because I have a soldering iron and I thought it was easy for me. But you may decide to use bare crimp connectors. It's up to you. So maybe a good recommendation is to print those two pictures, the cabling and the schematics. For the custom wiring integration, the first step is to remove all the wires, disconnect all the connectors, but I recommend you to label before if you're not used to these installations, and especially if you want to reuse the cables, because it's going to be easier for you to identify which is the best to reuse in one or other case, okay? I had already labeled because I was doing the stock integration for the 110 volts. So it's up to you. If you're doing all the cables from scratch, if you are crimping all the connectors, maybe you won't need. First, I'm gonna remove the buttons, exactly like I did in my power switch mod. Okay. Okay, so I'm removing all the cables here and the wires that connect to the lamp, the white ones. They are soldered or crimped, I don't know, but I'm gonna cut the wire here. Let's cut all of them here. Okay, so let's remove the wires connected to the solenoid. Three-way off. I remove the socket so that I have more space, but it is still very tight. Another point is that in this 220 volts in Europe, we have the eco mode. And inside this machine, there's a black box that is a kind of a hub for lots of wires. I wanted to remove this box, but it was pretty difficult. And then I let it there. I just cut the wires and insulated. But to understand that, I had to remove some screws that are difficult to re-screw later. So I don't recommend you to do that because it's going to be more difficult to reinstall those screws. So my recommendation is just cut the wires, insulate, and let it there. You will miss a little bit of space for the installation of the SSR, but I don't think it's worth the hassle of trying to remove the box, okay? Okay, H3 I'm gonna cut to reuse later. Now we have thermofuse that I'm not gonna use anymore. So these are the wires connected to the pump. And one of them also goes to that hub. And now I'm gonna put the socket back in position, remembering which side is at the top. I mark it. And here we go. The only cables that I would not remove are the ground wires, because you will see that the connection that is there is exactly what you would do in your Gaggiuino installation. So no need to modify. But I only discovered that after I removed all the wires. And here you can see how the ground wires are connected inside the machine. There are two that are connected to the frame, one connected to the solenoid valve, then it goes to the power socket, and there are two other wires that are connected to your lid. So no need to remove or change the ground wiring in your machine. In the next scenes, I'm gonna show how to remove the thermostat and to install the thermocouple. but I did that for the 110 volts, and then ignore the wires in the machine. Just pay attention to the installation of the thermocouple, okay? Here's the brew thermostat. We're going to remove to install the thermocouple type K. And here we had the BA and BB connected that I already removed. So we have 4 screws here that holds the boiler in position, and I'm gonna unscrew those 4. Remove the steam wand to make it easier to move it around. Okay, so this is the brew thermostat on the lateral. Right. Here we have the brew thermostat. Now let's install the thermocouple. Now you won't be able to see, but I just need to screw this thermocouple in the same place that was the thermostat, only hand tight, doesn't need to be super tight. All right. Now we need to route this cable for the thermocouple around the front of the machine and not on the back, which would be close to the pump area and would be subject to the interference of the high voltage wires and also electromagnetic interference from the pump and the solenoid valve. So let me route this cable now because it's easier. I'll let it here. And organize it later. Again, ignore the wiring. These are the scenes that I recorded when I was simulating the installation of the 110 volts. But I need to show you how to install the T and the pressure transducer. Now for the pressure transducer, we'll need this O-ring that comes in the kit from PIC. We're gonna put it inside the connector, hand tight. I think it's okay. There's a gap and it's expected. Now we are going to connect this to the hose. This hose that goes to the boiler, we need to cut about 65 millimeters above the connection to the boiler, around here. I'm going to measure and mark. I think it will leak some water. It's a bit difficult to cut here. Okay, you can use this hose cutter. Let's try also the other end here. Great. Okay, now we need to connect the T. We also need the clamps. Okay, so here I'll connect the one that will go to the pressure transducer, this one to the pump, and the other go into the boiler. Let's see now how I can connect the other hose. This is super tight without removing the boiler. And I need to be sure that I'm going to be able to tighten the screw again. And maybe like this. I should have space. Okay. Let's try to connect the T. The best position for me was holding with a plier and then using a longer screw to tighten this one. Now the last one. First the clamp and then Let's insert the hose. Alright, so here we have the pressure transducer. This is the position that it's gonna stay, probably. And now let's see if the funnel will pass and if I'm gonna be able to close the machine. Just a simulation. This is the original cable that was connected to the solenoid valve, to the line, and the length is quite exactly what was recommended in the Gaggiuino webpage. 45 centimeters. It has about 44 or 45 if I consider the connector. So I'll use this one, hoping that it will be sufficient, but if not, I can redo it later. Then I'm gonna route to the back of the machine. Always avoid crossing the DC area. I'm gonna route all the AC to the left and all the DC to the front. Here we have the wires that goes to the pump fuse. This is gonna be the pump neutral. I need one wire to connect to the neutral in the Gaggiuino. I think it can be this one. It's gonna be the easiest. Following the schematics, this is going to be the pump neutral. This is going to the N in the PCB. I'm going to crimp the other wire. Okay, so I just realized I don't have the proper tool to crimp the wires with the flag connector. So I'm going to use what I have. This is a regular spade female, and it works to connect to the Gaggiuino PCB. So this is going to the neutral in my PCB. Let's route also under the pump. Okay, so I have the N, it goes to the pump. And the pump goes to the neutral. From the pump, it needs to go to the socket. For the socket, I have this one. I'll have to organize it later. And after the socket, we need to connect to the boiler. We need about 24 centimeters. I think we have. Oh yes, we have. More than enough. There's too much cable here. And then it goes to the connectors in the boiler. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna do. This is the three-way solenoid valve, and I'm gonna connect it now. But I need to connect it to this wire, and it needs to go to the boiler. I'm gonna put some electrical tape here. I have the wire for the boiler here. It's a very long cable. We don't need all this. I'm gonna use a spade. This time I'm gonna insulate the whole connection. And now we can connect. Okay. Now the other end will go to the lamps. I don't wanna break the support. Okay, that's easy. The other one. Easier. This is a bit tighter. Okay, done. I soldered the wires. Now I'm gonna connect to this gray one that is coming from the solenoid valve, and then we'll connect the boiler and the thermal fuse. In reality, is the protection thermostat. So now let's put this frame back. Thermocouple wire should be here, a bit far away from this high voltage wires. So we have two lamps, right? The one that is going to the boiler is the steam. In reality, it's the heating lamp, and the one that is connected to the solenoid valve is the power lamp. I'm gonna fix the power lamp. Okay, now let's organize a bit the cable. Now the other lamp goes here. It's the heating lamp, the steaming position. It's where it was originally. That's where I'm gonna put. And we have the boiler connection. And this is time to replace the steam thermostat by the thermal fuse protection. So now I'm gonna connect the power socket, the line, to the switch in this P5, which is the connector at the bottom. For this, I'm gonna reuse one of the wires, and I'm going to reuse this wire because it has a flag connector, and then it's gonna fit better here because I can route the wire to the side, and it's gonna be a better installation. The color is not the best. In the Gaggiuino instructions, they're using a black wire, but it doesn't have much connections. So I think it's a limited chance of confusion, and I think it's the best option because I don't have the crimping tool for the flag connectors. I ordered, but it was not yet delivered. According to the instructions, we need 28 centimeters of wire. I have 30, and it's going to be sufficient. So let's connect. First, I'm going to identify in a way. This is the line. And then it goes to the P5. Right. Let me also connect the pump neutral. It's not possible to see here, but it's the connector in the middle of the pump. Okay. And this is a part that was missing between the two lamps. We need to connect this junction to the P4, which is here. Here we're gonna need only 10 centimeters, and I'm gonna use this piggyback connector because later I'll have to connect also this P4 to the SSR. And now I'm following the same color that is used in the diagram. I'm using the red wire. Okay, so I'm gonna solder these wires. So here we have the piggyback connector. I'm gonna connect the wire that goes to the SSR. And this connector that is not insulated, I'm gonna put downwards. Okay. Now I can put the lamp in place. This wire is going to the left side. And it's gonna wait for the SSR. Now I need 22 centimeters for the other side of the SSR. Maybe we can use another flag connector here. It's going to this side. Yeah. This is the SB. In reality, it's not a steam thermostat anymore. It's the thermofuse. Okay, and it's gonna wait for the SSR. Okay, there's something that is a bit confusing here because we are using red for both sides of the SSR. And one is coming from the thermofuse, and we should not connect to the lining. The other side is coming from the lamps and the power switch. So this one is coming from the power switch and the lamps because we use the piggyback connector. This is gonna be connected to the SSR, and also from the SSR we are gonna connect to the line in the 3PLN in your PCB. So these two should be together, and I'm gonna label so that I don't confuse them. Okay, so these are the two that are going to the SSR, and from the SSR to the line in the PCB. Okay, so here we have the SSR, and this is the AC side, this is the DC side. I'm going to connect those wires to the AC side. Now to connect those two wires together, instead of using 2 fork connectors, I'm going to use this ferrule, and fortunately I have this crimping tool. Nice. Nice and tight. Now I needed a white wire to connect to the P in the PCB and to the line in the pump. But I already have this that came in the kit from Peak Coffee. The size is perfect. It's a bit longer than it should, maybe 5 centimeters more, but it's okay. I'm going to connect to the pump, but again, you will not be able to see. I'm going to connect to the connector more to the left. Okay, so this is the P to the PCB, the low voltage wires. You need the black, that is the ground, at the bottom, and here on the other side as well. And we have the blue here. That is the brew switch, and the red is the steam switch to the left. Okay. As I mentioned before, cable management is very important. Then I 3D printed those hooks and I used double face tape to install in my machine. I think it gets not only more beautiful, more organized, but it's important for the good separation of DC and AC cables. If you don't have a 3D printer, you can also buy from AliExpress. There are some options, and I'll leave the links in the description. Okay, let's connect to the SSR. Orange in the positive, black in the negative. Very good position. It's better to connect before installing the SSR in the frame. With this, we finished the main wiring. In the next chapter, we are going to connect the PCB and screen. This part is applicable to both the 110 and 220 volts. I'm connecting the PCB to the high voltage, low voltage cables and sensors. And you will see that I'm also connecting the time of flight and the hardware scales. But if you don't have those accessories, don't worry. In Gen 3, the detection is automatic. You don't need to flash the extra defines like you need in Gen 2, for example. The time of flight is interesting to show you how much water you have in your reservoir. Sometimes I forget to refill it. In a Gaggia, it's not that difficult to see inside. But in a Ranchillo Silvia, I think it's much more useful because the water reservoir is not translucent and not visible. If you want to know more about the pros and cons of the hardware scales and the tests that I made to check the precision, you can see my hardware scales installation guide. The card is here. But in Gen 3, you can add the Bluetooth scales. It's simple, it's convenient. you will have less space between your drip tray and the spout, especially if you're using a double spout, it will be a bit more limiting. And in Gen 2 and Gen 3, you have the predictive scales. The predictive scales are not as precise as a hardware scale or the Bluetooth scale, but it works for many people. My personal opinion, to my level of exigence, I think it's a bit limiting, but you can decide. Last comment, the ST-Link and the PCB were connected in the bench tests. I'm not replicating here, but if you have any doubts, just check my previous video. The card is here. And with the parentheses closed, let's connect the PCB. Screen the J1, scales in the J8. Now the SSR here, switches in the third. Okay. And the last one is the pressure transducer. Right. And now the thermocouple. You need to connect the red in the positive at the bottom and the white in the negative, which is more to the top. The white's here. Yes, firm. Now let's see the AC portion. 3PLN. One comment here, the 6.3mm spade connectors were a bit thick for this PCB to connect 4 connectors, the 3, P, L, and N. Then I used a hot air gun and a plier to compress a bit the connectors and fit in that space. Right. Okay, so this is the cable for the time of flight that I need to pass on the back of the machine. There's a hole at the bottom. This is the cable for the screen. One of the cables for the screen. I'll let it separate. These 2 cables here. Now I'm gonna do the same for the time of flight. Okay, this is also done. This is for the ST-Link that goes outside. We also need to leave some space for the scale to protect a bit the cables. Let's add the zip tie now. Cables for the SSR are also a bit longer than we needed, I think. So here we have the connection for the scale. We're going to connect to the FPC cable here and route it down. Now let's put the steam wand back. Fix the boiler. Okay, so here another cable holder to organize a bit better. Okay, some things that I changed. Here we have the heating element. We have the 2, one on each side. And this is a jumper to connect to the 2 heating elements in series. Originally it was here, but then I switched it to this side. And I also switched this connector. I moved from this side to this one. But the main reason for switching the connectors is because this one is a high voltage wire and it was close to the DC connectors. And we want all the AC wires to be as further as possible from the DC connectors and DC wires. You can also see that I rearranged a bit the wires. And again, the same principle. I'm trying to keep the DC wires and connectors as far as possible from the AC. It's a bit difficult to see the thermocouple wire, but it's this blue one at the bottom of the machine. And again, I try to keep it as low as possible so that it's not close to the lamp wires, these wires here. Looking at the back of the machine, I try to keep all the AC wires to the left, all the DC wires to the right. And now let's connect the screen. So those are the wires for the screen. We need to pass through this hole. This is going to be the support for the screen in the front of the machine. I'm using the front mount. First one connector, then the second one. So now that we have the connector here, we need the back of the plate. So now we're gonna send to the back of the plate. In the screen house, this is the space for the flat cable. I'm gonna place it here. Then the UART. UART's here. And the power is here. On the lateral side. You have the screen. I forgot to install the SD cards, and we need it to store our shots, our extractions, the profiles. Now I'm gonna close and put it back in place. Just one detail here, I put 6 magnets, 2 in each of the pockets, and I used super glue. First I put 1 magnet in each of the pockets. I let it dry very well, and then I added more super glue and added the second group of magnets. Otherwise it's gonna be a bit messy. So I recommend you to do the same. Okay, now it's the moment. I hope I don't fry my board and my screen. And wow, it's working. Let me see if I change the temperature. Yes, the SSR is working. Here we can see the SSR. Okay, let's increase a bit the temperature. If it's blinking, it's because it's heating. And the temperature is increasing to 39 now. And I think it's okay for now. If you want to install the hardware scales and the time of flight, you're done. I just recommend you to check for any leakage before closing the machine and to connect the ground wires to the lid before closing. In the next video, I'll show you my temperature stability tests, the steam quality and power, how to connect the hardware scales and the time of flight, and many other details. In the meantime, you can see some beautiful images of this machine working in the channel of my friend Thales. If you understand Portuguese, or if you don't mind reading or listening to the auto dubbing, the content is great. But that's it. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.